There is a saying that all events in the world are meaningful, as fate has intricately woven every second, minute, and hour of human life. And today, I want to propose a small thought experiment. What would happen if the traveler never went to Inazuma and instead continued their journey first through Sumeru? This video is meant to just be an exercise into the wonders of fate and how just massively impactful a decision like that could be. I'm by no means instigating anything final or even concrete, since this is all just fun speculation. But before I begin, thank you to INQURIES for sponsoring this video. INQURIES is a browser built specifically for gamers, or people that really need to sort their life together. I don't know, I've been using this for almost all my research papers instead of actually gaming. Anyway, INQURIES comes with a bunch of cool features that I personally keep around. And what's really nice about it is that they're all free once you download it. It comes with customizable themes and wallpapers that you can download or upload. I've been using the League animated wallpaper since I've been losing my mind recently, but they've also come with a bunch of aesthetic designs and even anime and Genshin ones. Also, what's really neat about it is that they're constantly updating their roster, so make sure to keep your eyes checked for that. Another cool feature are workspaces that you can use to sort tabs with. Then you can switch them around and even customize their icons from the sidebar. But while you shouldn't have all 90 tabs open, in the event that you do want to make sure that you control whatever in the world is happening with your INQURIES to make sure that your computer doesn't explode. So last but certainly not the least is the GX control, where you can limit INQURIES' uses of your RAM, CPU, and even network. So if you're playing another game but want to keep your browser in the back, you don't have to worry about it eating up so much. So download INQURIES with the link in the description and tell me, if you can change your background to anything, what would you change it into? Also, can I just say this? Whoever is in charge of INQURIES' Twitter, you deserve a raise. Godspeed, INQURIES Twitter manager. Download INQURIES with the link below, and thank you to INQURIES for sponsoring this video. As part of the exercise, we're only going to look at the lore or in-universe implications rather than the meta implications of they didn't make Sumeru yet or whatnot. Now, let's begin with the original background on why the traveler went to Inazuma in the canon lore. Fun fact, the earliest mentions of Inazuma were actually by Zhongli, who assumed that the traveler would be going there after Liyue. But up until that point, the traveler only intended to look for the Seven but never had a proper arrangement. Had it not been for Zhongli, I feel like the traveler would have gone elsewhere. After all, Zhongli was the one that mentions eternity is closest to the heavenly principles, and almost makes the trip very enticing for the traveler. When in reality, we learned next to nothing about our goal after the Archon quest, and it actually would have been better to have gone to Sumeru instead to talk to Nahida, the god of wisdom. Anyway, Zhongli warns the traveler about the Vision Hunt decree as well as Baal's intentions of taking away visions in a threat to eternity. And yes, he does use the name Baal to refer to the Electro Archon. And it's also weird because considering that by this point, Inazuma is already famously known to be closed off. It makes you wonder about Zhongli's intentions of sending the traveler there instead of Sumeru, which doesn't have any known societal problems or limitations. Furthermore, another reason the traveler couldn't go straight to Sumeru was because of the chasm being closed to the general public, and it was practically illegal to go to the chasm because of the current affairs with the Fatui and the Chising. The current affairs with Tartaglia and Osail were still settling in. The Liyue Archon quest was the reason that the Fatui were expelled indefinitely from Liyue, and chasm operations were ceased indefinitely. This means that the traveler couldn't immediately go to Sumeru because the Chising were still clearing out logistical residue from Fatui operations. But let's assume there's absolutely none of that. Zhongli mentioned Sumeru instead of Inazuma. The traveler gets a free pass just like the many scholars that we've been meeting in Liyue and Mondstadt for some reason, and then we unlock the Sumeru Archon quest. What changes? Well, we first need to understand that in every Archon quest, there are 4 parties involved: the Traveler, the Fatui, the Citizens, and the Archon. Let's first discuss the Inazuma side of the story. Number 1 is that Inazuma would enter their second year into the Vision Hunt decree and Sakoku decree if the traveler never interceded. Inazuma would be in an even worse husk of its former self because of all the problems that we saw in the original canon, such as the rise of taxes, the strict entrance of outlanders, and the harsh rules being put on its citizens. Furthermore, certain characters would remain visionless. Thoma and Ito would never have regained their visions, and I'm sure many more would have been involved. Kazuha would still be a fugitive, and I don't doubt that other characters would have become visionless over the span of that year. Number 2 is that from the Fatui side, they would still have at at least 2 harbingers completely dominating 2 sides of the war. Both Senora and Scaramouche were sent to respectively play both the Shogun's army and the resistance. Additionally, because the Fatui would still be operating heavily, the delusion black market would have been established. In the original Archon quest, after Goro says the symptoms of the mysterious weapons they've been receiving, it was a traveler who tells Goro and Kokomi that the secret weapon was the Fatui delusions. Kokomi and Goro had no idea that the Fatui were involved or even what delusions are, despite having the weapons confiscated, meaning if they wanted to intervene in this new timeline in which the traveler isn't here to inform them about the Fatui, they would either have a delayed reaction or have no reaction at all because they'd be none the wiser. Number 3 is that on the Resistance's side, while this is definitely up for debate, they would definitely lose the war against the Archon. When we met them in the game, we know that they were already in a difficult state. Their rations are dwindling, plus morale was going down steadily. Additionally, the influence of the delusions, while helping them in the short run, would definitely have massive consequences on their entire troop. Even Yaimiko and the Traveler, during the Inazuma Archon quest, acknowledge that they have no way of actually winning against the Shogun. Number 4 is that the Harbingers would not have the Electrognosis. This one is the most important resolution out of all of them. The Electrognosis was sealed away with Yaimiko, and only got to Scaramouche because of Yaimiko's bargain with him. While it's possible that the Fatui eventually find intel that the Gnosis is no longer with the Archon, there would really be no way for them to suspect that it's with Yaimiko, given how even in the original Archon quest, we saw Senora reach out to the Raiden puppet similar to how she reaches out to Venti. So it's possible that they don't actually know where the real Gnosis is. Because number 5 is that when the Traveler does eventually go to Inazuma, the entire nation would be shadow controlled by the Fatui, almost to the same extent as Mondstadt. Remember, while the Raiden Shogun is a true monarch of the nation, her jurisdiction was heavily influenced by the prerogative set down by A. As such, as long as the Fatui aren't imposing on her idea of eternity, she and A were fine with whatever they do. Not to mention, it was also hinted that the Vision Hunt Decree was the Fatui's idea, and it was just approved by A. Now let's discuss the Sumeru side. Number 1 is that the Archon quest actually plays out as normal for the most part, with the biggest exception of the Balladeer. The original Archon quest's main antagonists were never the Fatui, but instead the sages who disrespected Nahida and their blind faith to knowledge and wisdom as an ultimate asset. Nahida was sealed away for much longer. Those were the core themes, while Dottore and Scaramouche were playing second fiddle. Therefore, the Sumeru Archon quest doesn't really change all that much. The Archon quest would instead end with the moment we rescue Nahida and undo the seals on her. Furthermore, because she would eventually take up the role as an Archon, the sages would still be rightfully punished for insubordination. It's actually fascinating because the Traveler would have had an easier time clearing Sumeru's problems because there would be less Fatui intervention than in the original. Dottore would also most likely be working alone, and would play the same role as spectator as he did in the original Archon quest. Dottore's main ploy was the mechanization of the Balladeer, but other than that, there doesn't seem to be much he's planning to do in terms of blasphemy. We actually have yet to see him burn down the Irminsul. He's consistently been in the background manipulating the sages, so we'd probably have a resolution of that ploy instead of the god creation plan. The Traveler would have also never had to fight the Balladeer because Scaramouche would have still been in Inazuma dealing with the Vision Hunt Decree. Or at least, the Traveler would have never fought the robot because Scaramouche would have never been there, or the robot itself would have never been powered by the Electrognosis. Number 2 is that, because there's no Electrognosis, Dottore and Nahida's confrontation would be on different terms. There were 2 important things that Nahida gained during that exchange: the loss of Dottore's segments, and the information that Dottore possessed that she deemed worthy of a Gnosis. Because she only has 1 bargaining chip, she can only get 1 of these boons. Number 3 is that Elazar would not have been cured and the world would still remember the Greater Lord. In the Archon quest, Nahida states that she needed the power of both Gnosis to connect the consciousness of the tree to a point 500 years ago. The second Gnosis was important to saving the Irminsul. As such, Irminsul would have still been corrupted in this timeline because we would have no Electrognosis, and certain characters may or may not perish after the Archon quest. Smaller changes would have been implemented. Tartaglia would have never met Sinyan and Shikitaisho because he would have no reason to search the domain in 2.2. He only searched them originally because he thought that a balladeer would be in there. The Iridori Festival would have also never happened because of the Sakoku Decree. The Iridori Festival is an international convention that's meant to take in people from all over the world, which is why we had Klee, Albedo, Venti, and Xingqiu in the first place. Meta-wise, we would have never gotten this cool cutscene because Signora would still be alive. And I don't think I could take that, honestly. But yeah, that's it for me today. What do you think would have changed? Again, these are all just speculations and a really fun thought experiment. And honestly, a break from the absolute buttload of Sumeru information that's about to go down in a few days. Anyway, my name is Aster and thank you to OperaJax for sponsoring this video. And thank you all for chilling with me.
1, 2, 3, testing. 1, 2, 3.
世界で一番の姫様